Single stakeholder calls are really easy. You identify one person's need, you pitch them a solution that gets them there, you handle objections, you close, you count the money. But when there's multiple decision makers, influencers, stakeholders, most salespeople lose control immediately. And I'm going to tell you how not to do this, as after analyzing dozens of multi-person sales calls and coaching teams through complex pitches in both B2B and B2C, I've discovered the biggest mistakes that salespeople make and how to avoid them. And it's not poor presentation skills, guys. It's understanding group psychology and power dynamics of the group. So this is the pitch panel strategy. This is the way you're going to manage energy and information flow with multiple people on the other side of the call. You're going to orchestrate multiple personalities into a single buying decision. This strategy has been road tested and used to sell up to 12 people on a single sales call, and I've not seen it taught anywhere else. This isn't about pitching to a group. It's about conducting a group psychological symphony where everyone plays their part in your closing sequence. Let's get into it, shall we? Part 1 is why multi-stakeholder calls just require a different psychology. Groups behave differently than individuals, so your sales approach must account for these psychological differences. Here's a few that you're going to have to contend with. Diffusion of responsibility. Groups are slower to decide generally because no single person bears full responsibility for the decision or the outcome. Number 2, social proof amplification. When one person commits, others are more likely to follow suit due to social pressure, social proof. Similarly, with objections, when one person voices an objection, a concern, a hesitation, other people are typically likely to jump on. We call that the bandwagon effect. This applies at every stage of the sales call. Risk amplification. Groups tend to be more risk averse because multiple people are now questioning each element. And then analysis paralysis. Of course, when there's more people, it multiplies all the problems, confusions, hesitations, questions. Everyone has to understand the same information at roughly the same speed, or things will break down. This means you need to be sharper, faster, and more incisive and more skilled at applying the subtle pressure needed to keep everything moving along swimmingly. And then authority confusion. Without a clear hierarchy, groups struggle to make decisive choices. The most common theme here is a silent killer who raises no objections at all during the actual sales pitch, but then kills the deal with negativity as soon as you're out of earshot. That's happened to me more times than I'd like to admit. Now let's go into the personalities of the people that you're going to meet on these calls, up to 12 of them. The pitch panel strategy is going to address all of these psychological realities, and you need to meet the types of people that are going to come on to these calls. We're going to learn to consistently identify authority to eliminate confusion, use sequential agreements to create social proof, manage energy to maintain momentum through extended deliberations, control information to minimize that risk amplification, and then also question premises to disrupt analysis paralysis. So now we get to the power map. And the power map, my dear friend, is how you are going to ascertain who is all on your call. You need to identify a couple of different key influencers on your calls. There's probably an economic buyer. There's probably a day-to-day user. There's probably a major influencer, right? Someone who's going to influence the final economic buyer. There's probably going to be someone who's more of a relationship builder who cares more about having everyone get along than which decision ends up being made. They are there to keep the peace. There's probably a skeptic who is there specifically to kill the deal. That's maybe your risk manager. There's probably also a technology partner or a technology guy or gal who's there to make sure that whatever discussed solution is going to fit in their tech stack. And if I didn't say it before, there's probably a implementer or a day-to-day user. There may also be an internal advocate or internal champion who really wants you to win. There may be a consensus seeker. But here's what you're going to do to start mapping out all these varied and different people to control the flow of energy information. You need to conduct a power map to identify the 3 most critical roles to first identify are the decision maker, the ultimate authority, the buying authority, the influencer, who is the person the decision maker trusts most, and the person the decision maker is going to look to in their absence to advocate for the right decision. And then the skeptic. You're going to need to identify the skeptic so that you can smack them down if need be. This is the person who's looking for reasons to say no. Here is the direct identification strategy. Just ask, guys. Just ask. Who's the money? Who's going to be implementing this day to day? Who's the technology? Oh, who should I be directing my questions to for the decision, ultimate decision on this? Is it Dwayne or is it Adrian? Who's bringing the money or who's paying for this? Ha ha ha. Who's the credit? Who's the hustler? If you're talking about B2C, what role is everybody playing here? Who's going to end up implementing this technologically? Ask whatever questions you need and just try to map the flow of power. Once someone is identified as the primary contact, often others will fall into supporting roles. Be very careful of people that are very silent in this stage and won't really sign up for any role. Often those folks are the real power. So you're going to be looking for people that are saying things like, haha, I'm just here to take notes or whatever, or I'm not important. Nobody actually cares what I think. That's usually the big boss. People use humor to deflect the tension of actually being everyone's senior VP. And again, this is in case you don't have already amazing Oppo research and you didn't go into everyone's LinkedIn bios in great depths before the call. Sometimes you just don't have the opportunity to do that, or they spring it on you last minute. People just show up that you have no idea who they are. Watch for hidden threats. Hidden threats are the people that are quiet. The quiet ones are always a problem. And most average salespeople just allow the quiet ones to hang out in the background because they're like, oh good, Sarah's not talking. That's one less person for me to manage. No, incorrect. The reason Sarah's not talking is she's creating a very detailed list of how she's going to kill your deal. She's not talking because she's stewing in her own juices of how much she hates you and your product and how much she wants to kill it dead. Don't let Sarah stay quiet. Ask Sarah questions. Bring her out. Draw her out. Make sure she doesn't get to be a wallflower. The person saying nothing is gathering ammunition to kill the deal. Sarah, I want to make sure this makes sense from your perspective too. What questions do you have so far? What thoughts do you have so far? Identify existential threats. Now, some people will be on the call who are actually an existential threat to your deal because your deal is an existential threat to their job. This would be the media buyer, for example, if you're a lead generation agency and you potentially could replace their job, right, as a media buyer, or the internal copywriter and you're bringing in an AI copywriter, or maybe it's the realtor and you're pitching an investment strategy that requires off-market deals that doesn't need a realtor's access to the MLS. These people are going to be opposed to your deal because it threatens their livelihood. They may not only want to hire you, not only want to not hire you, they might fundamentally oppose that which you sell or your vehicle of getting results. And that is an existential threat to their business model, and therefore they're going to be existentially opposed to you getting the deal. So the basic principle here is you got to figure out who these people are. You got to map the power structure. You got to make sure no one's hiding in the background. I have a free download for you guys in the description that's going to outline the major players that you're going to get on these pitch panels, and there's 6 of them. And it's going to go into great detail on how to convert each one of those people. It's more detail than we have time to go into in this particular video, but it's going to cover your economic buyer, which is the final authority, the skeptic or the risk manager, the deal killer. It's going to cover the implementer or user, the day-to-day operator. It's going to cover the influencer or the advocate. Hopefully you have one of those, an internal champion. And often, guys, a major key alpha I'm going to give you is oftentimes type 2, the skeptic or risk manager, can become type 4, the influencer advocate, if you know how to handle them. You can often turn your biggest skeptic into your biggest champion if you focus on them with your pressure points and your leverage. Switch them over into your internal champion if you don't have one. The technical evaluator is going to tell you how to get past that gatekeeper, the relationship builder or the consensus seeker, how to use them. They're very critical. And then there's sequential engagement tactics, power mapping questions, managing personality conflicts, and energy management across all personalities. And in that download, we've also got a closing sequence by personality. What order should you go in to close the whole deal? That's going to be very valuable. Go ahead and download that down below, and that'll be shot right to your inbox. But for now, let's get on with the rest of the video, which is I want to teach you how to do what I call assumption disruption, which is questioning their premises. So multi-person calls often have more objections because as each person is going to bring their own assumptions, their own concerns, their own objections. Here's the key part is you don't want to accept their framing as fact. So for instance, in a real estate scenario, let's say someone comes to you, it's a multi-person pitch panel call, and one of them says, yeah, we don't like our area. It's really tough. It's not good for fix and flips because, properties are sitting on the market for 100 days. You would want to challenge that assumption because the assumption embedded there is, 100 days is too long to wait for a deal to sell. You might want to challenge them gently and say, is 100 days bad? Or, would it be bad to wait 100 days to make $50,000 to $100,000? Would that be too long for you guys to wait? You're going to challenge their assumption directly because you're going to use your own authority to overcome it and say, in a lot of our markets, people are waiting 120 or 130 or 150 days. So I guess why would you be unwilling to wait 100 days? That is challenging premises. You always want to be ready in multi-stakeholder conversations to knock down the expertise that they think they're bringing to the call, because most people are not as expert as they portray themselves to be. Another way to do this is a recontextualization strategy, where someone says, oh yeah, well, it's hard to wait 100 days, or let's say they say it's hard to find deals that are under 350,000. Like, let's say, just for example, that's what they're telling you. You could reframe it as, oh, I understand you're saying it's difficult. Would it be impossible, or would it be just a little bit more difficult than you would like? And just force them to admit it's possible, but it's challenging. Once they acknowledge the possibility, difficulty becomes a work ethic question that's back on them, not a feasibility question of does this method even work? Hopefully that makes sense. Think about in your own business how you can use premise challenging and recontextualization to keep people a little bit more on your page. Then you also want to have this key skill of binary choice elimination. I call this the get off the fence strategy. What you do here is you present two options that are mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive and framed in a way that is beneficial to your particular offer. So, for instance, you might say something like, is it worth pushing through difficulty to achieve your goals, or is it just not worth it to you at all? And this is going to force people, of those two choices, they're probably going to say, well, it is worth it. It's more effort than we would like, but it is worth it. In a B2B scenario, you might ask, oh, is it actually, so the company has a big goal of doubling sales in the next 12 months. Is that something that the company has aligned before, or would the company prefer to just stay the same and really shrink back into nothing? Which would be better? And of course, with that framing, doubling sales in 12 months is going to be preferably. So they're going to say, yes, we'd prefer to grow sales and double sales in 12 months. This eliminates endless deliberation, which can happen a lot when you have multiple people on the call. You want to avoid as much as possible them getting into a state of analysis paralysis when they're forced to choose between one or the other. All you need is one person to make a commitment publicly, and social pressure will help maintain that momentum and get other people to line up behind that one person. Another big key skill is a mathematical advantage. And this is true in all sales, but it's especially true in sales when there's multiple people on the call. So for instance, multiple people could start doing their own calculations. And especially if you have a very technical person on the call, a number cruncher, an analytical buyer, they for sure are going to be doing analytical calculations on their own time off the call. That's why you can't leave them alone to do their own ROI calculations, because the thing that's most likely to happen is they're going to misunderstand something about your offer, misunderstand the math, do the math wrong, throw out a number, and then everyone's going to anchor to that number. Even if it's a wrong, incorrect number, people are going to anchor to that, latch onto it, and then that's going to be the talking point that gets socialized internal to the organization is some bad math. And you want to avoid that happening at all costs. Because again, logic underpins emotion, and if people have a logical reason to reject your sales argument, they are going to latch onto that like a lamprey on whatever it is the lamprey latches onto. I forget, from my marine biology. Someone can maybe fill me in the comments down below. That would be great, please. Thank you. So all this to say is you need to control the math conversation before they start computing the worst case scenario. And there's a couple examples of how you might do that, but I'm going to leave you to read that if you want to go back after this video and look at this, because I'm going to link this whole Canva doc as well. But the whole point is you need to understand how to do the math on your own offer, make it compelling to them, and frame it as not an expense, but an investment that makes sense and is very doable and logical based on the rest of what else they are already investing in. You also want to anchor low. You want to have an understanding of anchoring and how it affects people's decision-making. You might want to anchor high. You might want to anchor low, just depending on your particular case and situation. And you want to always remember and bring in opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is very powerful in making logical arguments in sales. You want to understand that even cost, doing nothing is a cost of inaction, right? That has an opportunity cost. Trying out multiple different vendors, that's an opportunity cost. Having a group of 12 people perseverate for 3 to 15 days, there's a cost there. Even having 12 people on a sales call, you could quickly roughly add up how much all their salaries are costing and say, hey, this call itself is costing us $15,000 just to have this call. So don't you think we should present real numbers on this call? Don't you think we should discuss real numbers to make a good decision with the $15,000 we've already thrown down on this decision-making process? Wouldn't that be good? Certainly that's going to make you well regarded by the more analytical and math-minded people on the call, which is going to redound to your ultimate positive success. The takeaway here is if you control how the numbers are presented, then you control how the group evaluates value and risk, which is something you very much want to do. Let's talk a little bit about documentation. There's going to be a point when you're talking to multiple people or multiple stakeholders where they want to review your documentation, i.e. your terms and conditions, i.e. your contracts. It's just important that you use this as a way to move the ball forward rather than allow them to use it as an indefinite stall tactic. So one thing I love doing, even if it's multiple stakeholder calls, is say, hey, let's just review and make sure you're all okay with our terms and conditions. I never say contract, I say terms and conditions. If you find anything that's a deal breaker, it's better to find out now than later, right? So let me walk you through it right now. Does everybody have their email open, or can everyone see my screen? And I'm going to share it. This is going to create a document review that creates urgency to discover deal breakers, and it frames a document review as about discovering deal breakers, not as about, we're going to redline this with legal anyway. I want everyone to be in agreement on the terms and conditions before I send it over to legal for redlining. If someone says, the rest of our team still needs to review this, still go through it with them, have them notate areas specific concerns where they might need any modifications. And obviously, highest leverage, if you need them more than they need you, you're going to be more likely to modify your contracts. If it's low leverage, like a B2C situation where they need you a lot more than you need them, then there's no way you're modifying your terms and conditions. The basic group principle here is that documents, terms and conditions, contracts give groups something concrete to discuss, but only if you frame it as a review process that is collaborative. And, the bigger the company, obviously, the more they're going to have legal go through and redline it. But it can be extremely useful to have basic deliverables and terms and conditions presented to the group as a way to guide and structure and focus the conversation, especially if people start going in all different directions. You might want to introduce a document review to get the whole group back on the same page and give them something to focus on and give them a structure to go through that you can then guide and you can then frame the conversation. The documentation dance is really about making order come out of chaos, because if you have 12 people on a call, there can be a lot of chaos. So use that to your advantage. One thing you'll note if you do any level of these types of multiple stakeholder meetings is that there will be personality conflicts sometimes within the group that will be playing out in the group call that you have no party to. And maybe there's infighting happening between groups within the organization. Maybe, as I mentioned, there's someone for whom this is an existential threat. They don't want to lose their job. The company's basically using you as a threat of them losing their job. They need to get their rear end gear. They've involved a bunch of people on the call just to make it even more threatening. You could be part of that type of dance. There could be a boss who's trying to demonstrate to new subordinates how he does business. There could be all kinds of internal politics happening that could actually have nothing to do with you, that can make you just an accessory to the internal politics. Obviously, this is more prevalent with bigger companies. Not to say small companies don't have politics, they do, but generally small companies are just so much more concerned about survival than they are about politics. Politics is really the luxury of wealthy companies. But regardless of whether it's a small or a big company, when you have multiple stakeholders, you have a lot more personalities to manage. That's why you need the download that I'm giving you for free in the description of this video. You need to study it. You need to study those 6 types of stakeholders very much in detail and in depth, and you have to be ready to identify who they are. Even going so far as in your regular conversations and you're selling to just one person, you want to identify what type of buyer are they as you go through those sales calls, so you hone your intuition. Is this an economic buyer? Is this a influencer? Is this a person who just wants us all to get along, who just wants agreement? Is this a technical evaluator type of person? And so on and so forth. You really want to understand always who's sitting across from you. That way, when 6 or 8 or 12 different people come into a call, you can quickly place them. And as I said before, power map them into the structure and understand how the hierarchy works and who needs to be sold first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, etc. It's a skill. You're going to have to do a lot of studying to get good at it and get ready for it. But hopefully this video and the resource I'm giving you down below is going to help you with that. The close is orchestrating agreement from multiple people who have different concerns, priorities, and decision-making. And the basic principles that you need to follow in multi-stakeholder calls, the pitch panel strategy, is get everyone to get their feelings out on the table and then sort through those boxes on the table of everyone's different feelings, everyone's different objections, concerns, hesitations, and also the good things they say, and just organize them in a logical flow. So you're going to take care of the technical problems. You're going to make sure that that gets tied off or resolved, or you put a pin on it until later evaluation. The day-to-day implementation, you want to evaluate that, put a pin on it for later evaluation, or you want to make sure that there's some solution that's coming up there, and so on and so forth. And you want to just organize them so that they become a beautiful symphony. If you are just playing whack-a-mole with people's objections and concerns, it's going to be discordant, and I guarantee you it will not close. If you're creating a symphony where you are still in control of the call, you are using your questions to drive the ordering of information and energy across the call, and you are playing off the different personalities against each other, then that is when you are going to orchestrate a beautiful symphony, in which case you are going to have a much higher likelihood of getting the deal. Sequential agreement. Get agreement from the easiest person first in general. Have a much more in-depth strategy in the document below. Then use them as social proof to influence the others. So Adrian, sounds like you're comfortable with the pro package. That's great. Dwayne, what questions do you still have, if any? Or are you also comfortable with the pro package? Are you good to go? Isolation technique, when one person is holding up the group, address them directly. It sounds like everyone else is ready to move forward. What would you need to say, Dwayne, to get comfortable with this? Is there anything else we could do to help you? Mind you, sometimes, often, the greatest power you have is standing back and letting one of your internal champions or influencers sell another person on the call. If they have a close relationship, often you're going to have an internal influencer or champion do the sales job for you. Once you've made their sales arguments to that person, the most powerful you can do actually is sell over the influencer and sell them even more convincingly, because then that internal influencer is going to sell the other doubters, not only just on that call, but throughout the rest of the whole decision-making process, which could be days, weeks, or months, even when you're not on the call. So they become your little sock puppet, or really your representative, little sales representative within the company. Then they're going to do all the sales for you. You really want one of those. Try to help them, try to get them everything they need, and then you will be in the money. So again, identify the easy yes, leverage the social proof, isolate any, eliminate any remaining concerns, and then secure the group consensus. Once everybody sees everybody agreeing, you're going to be golden and good to go. Ultimately, this is a symphony conductor. You want to become a symphony conductor. The pitch panel strategy transforms you from presenter to symphony conductor, where you're identifying the roles, you're managing the flow, you're orchestrating agreement, and then you're leveraging social dynamics to accelerate rather than complicate decisions. And once you have this skill, my friends, you can knock down deals that average salespeople couldn't even touch. And once you become the go-to guy or gal in your organization for pitching to multiple people, you will have the biggest opportunities. So there you go. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you guys in the next video.